Well, please take your seats if you're here physically. My mic's quite loud. Might try and get rid of some of that echo. My name is Josh. I'm one of the leaders of Hope Church. I'm really pleased that everyone's here physically and watching online as well. You're so welcome. Today, around the world, many churches and many denominations and groups of churches are kind of celebrating kind of Church Planting Sunday. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to share with you a little bit about the Marsh. So we are looking at doing a church plant in Lancaster, in the Marsh ward of Lancaster, which has been kind of in development for some time. We are looking to restart kind of weekly gatherings in May for that, which is really exciting. We'll be meeting physically, hopefully, in the community centre. So please be praying for us as we try to establish this work. And hey, if you're interested in that, if you're interested in church planting, if you've got a heart for the Marsh area or for communicating the gospel to people who just aren't following Jesus yet, or just aren't in relationship with Jesus, then come and get in touch, come and get involved. It'll be great to have you as part of the journey. And then this Sunday we are continuing in our series through Exodus. So if you've got your Bibles with you, we're going to be in Exodus chapter 3. And really, when Andrew and myself and Jamie we were talking about and thinking about what would be the next good sermon series to do after Easter, we landed on Exodus, and really our prayer is that as we journey through Exodus, Andrew came up with this great title, Life After Lockdown, in that, how God is rescuing and redeeming his people from Egypt, from their slavery, from their oppression, and he begins to shape them and mold them into a nation, into a people whom he has relationship with, and in whom he finds pleasure and glory, that they find a life after their lockdown in Egypt. And I guess it would just be our prayer, hope, and desire that as we emerge out of lockdown, COVID, as we emerge back as a church, as we begin to gather again, as we begin to start to establish what we are doing a little bit more, that we would not just go back to where we were before, but that God would be reshaping us, remolding us, that we would grow in relationship with him, and that we would embrace his greater life after our lockdown. So that's our prayer, really, is that we would track along with the journey of the Israelites coming out of their slavery, coming out of their lockdown, and that we would find the same liberation, we would find the same life that they found in the Lord, and that we might just commit ourselves to the work of the Lord. So that would be my prayer to you this morning. So this year in June, we will celebrate the 77th anniversary of the D-Day landings. The 77th anniversary of the D-Day landings. It couldn't really be celebrated much last year because of the restrictions in COVID, but hopefully this year people will be able to celebrate it a lot more, especially in places like Normandy and in France, where obviously that took a larger significance. And when we think about D-Day, we think about this master plan kind of concocted in secret, and then delivered on a single day, to liberate France and the rest of Europe from the control and the oppression of Nazi Germany. And in this passage that we're going to look at today, in Exodus chapter 3, we see something of a similar nature. We see God communicating his plan to Moses of how he is going to liberate the Israelites out of their oppression, out of their slavery, to bring them into a land of freedom, but for a purpose, and that purpose is for them to be in relationship with God and for them to worship God. This morning we are going to be thinking about how we are rescued to worship, how the Israelites were rescued to worship, and how that applies to us as well. So if you've got your Bibles with you, we're in Exodus chapter 3. The words will be on the screen as well. We'll be reading from verse 1. So it says, "Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God." Horeb, the mountain of God, that is also another name for Mount Sinai. It's the same mountain that Moses and the Israelites would later receive the law, the Ten Commandments. Okay, so he's at that significant place. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, "I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up." When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Let's pause there. So the first thing I want to draw out from the beginning of this passage is that we need to be a people who are led and captivated by God. We need to be a people who are led and captivated by God. So Moses is there with his sheep. He's tending the flock of his father-in-law, and he's leading the wilderness. And then he comes across this bush, this strange bush which seems to be burning. It's not burning up. It's not like collapsing. The branches aren't falling off. The leaves aren't perishing. You can see the flames, but you can see the color of the bush. The structure is still intact. It's still living. There's something strange going on. He's seeing these natural flames, but something of a divine thing that's going on, whereby this bush is burning, but it's not burning up. And so he says, I will go over and see this strange sight. Like, I'm curious about this. I want to investigate this. Now, it's interesting how in the passage it says, God kind of waited and watched to see if he would turn aside, and he did. And when he had turned aside, then he spoke to him. And I always kind of wonder, what if Moses never turned aside to see the bush? What if Moses was having a bad day and just thought, this is a bit of a strange sight. Never mind, I've got sheep to look after. I better get on my way. And Moses is like, no, come back. I've got a big job for you to do. Of course, God would know that he would turn aside. He is all-knowing. But I wonder if this reveals something about the character or the nature of Moses, or how God has wired him, in that he is captivated by something of the divine. That he sees this bush, and instead of just kind of glossing over it, or instead of just passing by, he wants to go and investigate. He wants to go and find out. I always kind of wonder, why was he going to Mount Horeb in the first place? If you look at where Mount Horeb is, in relation to Midian, where he's come from, it's kind of on the other side of the Red Sea. He has to kind of go right round, kind of almost like the Red Sea, to kind of get to Mount Horeb. It's quite a distance away. And I always kind of wonder, in my mind's curiosity, the Bible doesn't say this. This is just me thinking. Is he kind of searching after something? Is he kind of searching after the divine? Is he kind of searching after God and wondering, maybe if I lead my sheep to a mountain seems to be a great place where I could meet God. Maybe if I go there, I might meet with the living God. And he did. I think it says something about Moses, because later in Exodus 33, when Moses is complaining about leading the people, like years later, once they've come out of Egypt, he's complaining to God in Exodus 33, and he says, God, you've given me this huge task to do, and I'm struggling with it. But one thing he pleads with God, he says, please don't send us up from here without your presence, because God is kind of like, God is angry with the Israelites, because it was just around about the time where they'd kind of made the golden calf, God given the law, made the golden calf. God was angry, and God was about to leave them. And Moses is like, no, don't send us up without your presence. Don't leave us, God. I want to stay in your presence. I want to stay close to you. I want to know your presence. So you can see there's something about Moses. He just wanted to stay close with God. He wanted to know God. He wanted to be, captivated by God's presence. And then what he says after that, he says, God, now show me your glory. Remember that in Exodus 33? Then in Exodus 34, God shows him his glory. He passes by the rock and he reveals his wondrous nature. But we can see something in the heart of Moses, is that he is a leader who is led and captivated by the Lord. He's a leader who is led and captivated by God's presence. He just wants to stay close to God. And I kind of wonder if that's the way that God has wired him, or why God chose him to do this mission, to be this leader of the Israelites, because it would take a leader like that to lead this people who would just want to stay close with God, who wouldn't want to go off and do their own thing, who wouldn't get puffed up with pride, thinking they can do things in their own strength, but that he would be totally captivated by the presence of God. And that was maybe what led him to go and investigate this bush in the first place. And as a church, we need to be a people who are led and captivated by the presence of God. That is something which needs to stir our heart, which needs to move our soul. That we wouldn't be captivated by a church growth gimmick, or we wouldn't just be captivated by filling seats on a Sunday, or getting more online views, or increasing our reputation in the city. We don't want any of those things to captivate our heart. But the only thing we want to captivate our heart is knowing and relating to the living God. That we would be a people led and captivated by him. This week I saw an interesting video on Facebook about how this guy just like science videos, and he got a ladybird, and some of you might have seen it. He got a ladybird, and he put it on a piece of paper, and he got a pen, and don't worry, it didn't hurt the ladybird, so It's okay, spoiler alert. He didn't hurt the ladybird, but he started to draw a line on the pen in front of the ladybird, and the ladybird just tracked the line and just followed the line in the pen, maybe kind of smelling something in the ink of the pen, or maybe like a chemical that, thought it was nice. But it kind of followed the line, and wherever he drew, the ladybird just followed it and tracked the line. And we need to be like that as a people of God, that we just want to follow after God, that we don't want to turn aside to the left or to the right. We want to be captivated by his presence. We want to be captivated by the word of God. We want to be captivated by the Holy Spirit. We want to be captivated by fellowshipping with one another, that it would stir our heart, that it would move our soul towards God, and that we would not be distracted by any other thing, but that we would have our eyes fixed on the Lord as he leads us forward. This fire, this burning bush, it's significant that it was a bush that was on fire, because that same fire would lead the Israelites on their journey out of Egypt. Remember that when they left Egypt after the Red Sea, there would be a pillar of smoke by day and a pillar of fire by night, and they would be led by that fire. They would be kept safe by that fire. They would be guided by that fire. There would be a people led and captivated by the fire of God, by the light of God. And Jesus would later say, I am the light of the world. I am that fire. I am that flame. I am that one who gives you meaning. I am that one who reveals truth. I am that one who gives you purpose. Jesus is the light of our world. Jesus is the burning bush of our lives. Jesus is that pillar of fire of our church, that we are captivated by his presence. We want to follow step after step after his leading. That is that we want to just stay close to his presence, and just that we would follow where he leads us, that we would be a people led and captivated by the Lord. So I would ask this morning, what is your heart captivated by? And is your heart, or does your heart ever get captivated by God? And I know that we can easily get captivated or distracted, or our minds and our hearts can run off after so many other things. We can easily be captivated by, the football transfer window. Or we can easily be captivated by when the next season of Peaky Blinders is going to be released. These are the things that we can occupy our thoughts or get us excited. And I know that often we say, just give everything to God, but yet we can so easily get distracted by very, very menial things in life, and it can consume our thinking, can't it? It consume our thinking. Lately I've been recording videos and doing some things online, and so I've been trying to find a good camera to do that with. So I've been trying to buy a decent camera, but the camera I wanted to buy, I couldn't afford, so I bought a cheaper version, which was still quite good anyway. But what I started to do was to sell it and then to buy it, and then to sell one and then buy one, and keep trading up and up and up to try and get to the one that I wanted. And I kind of managed to do it. I've managed to get to a pretty decent camera that I've got for 40% of its worth, which is really good. So I'd encourage you, always shop for a good deal. Always look for a good deal. And don't always have to buy new. Buy second-hand. There you go. Still, that was a free bit. You got that for free. But what I kind of found in that process of I was looking at eBay all the time, I was looking at Facebook selling, and I was looking at Amazon and trying to find the best deal and figuring out if I bought that, I could sell it for this and get a little bit of money and then work my way up. Man, it was hard work, and it captivated my mind. It consumed my thinking, whereby, throughout the day or even when I was sleeping, it was the only thing I could think about. I could only think about how can I get to this camera that I want, that has all the specs, which has all the gadgets that I need to do the job that I want it to do. And it consumed my thinking. And now I've got to a point where I'm tired. I don't want to do that anymore, because I don't want to be consumed by, something that's just very mundane and just doesn't really have any significance. And we kind of tend to live our lives like that, don't we? We say we don't have time for God, but yet often our minds are just so consumed with other things, that our minds are just so loud, it's just so busy in our heads that we just don't have the time for quiet and stillness, just to be with God and just to be captivated by his presence. Conversely, I know that sometimes when I'm doing the dishes, I'm washing up, and I'm listening to some worship music, and a song will come on that I haven't heard of before, or one of my favorite Christian songs on Spotify or something like that, and then in that moment I get captivated. My soul gets moved. Oh, my heart just beats for joy as this song comes on, and I just have to stop. I just have to start praying. I just have to start worshiping. I start praying in tongues, whilst I'm worshiping, whilst I'm washing up, because my heart is just captivated. My soul is just moved at that moment. My heart is stirred at that moment, because I'm just allowing myself to be led and captivated by the Lord in that moment. And I'll just encourage you just to allow time and space in your week, in your day for that to happen. To stick on some worship music, just to sit down with your Bible, just to start to pray, and just to allow that time and space for your heart and your soul to be moved by God. That we would be a people who are led and captivated by God, that would be pursuing his presence. It's great to hear that Eden 2.0 we started up again on a Sunday evening, because I know that's often been a time where we've just created space, where Jamie and the team have just created space just to be captivated by the presence of God, just to be led by him, just to create that space. So I'd encourage you to do that, as kind of Moses was doing in his life. Let's move on. Let's read from verse 7. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, the Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you, that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. So God kind of lays out his plan to Moses. And we can actually see that God is actually redeeming and rescuing his people for three purposes. And what I want to draw out from this point is that we are redeemed to serve and worship. We are redeemed and rescued to serve and to worship the living God. We can see that God is redeeming, God is rescuing the Israelites kind of for three reasons. Firstly, they are being rescued and redeemed because of God's kindness, because God is kind, just because God is merciful towards them, because God is compassionate towards them. And so God is going to rescue them because of that, and also to display his kindness to them and to us. Secondly, they are being rescued to serve his purpose, to serve a purpose, and they are being rescued to worship. Okay, so firstly, they're being rescued because of God's kindness. So God says, I have seen their misery, I have heard them crying out, I'm concerned about their suffering, and so now I'm going to rescue them. You see, God looked down at his people, he saw their pain, he saw their misery, he saw their oppression, he heard their cries, and his heart beaten for them, and that he was moved to do something. He was moved to jump in and to rescue them, to redeem them. And you've just got to know this morning, whether you're here physically, whether you're watching online, I just want you to know this morning that if you are going through suffering, if you are going through pain or loss or hardship, well, you just got to know that God sees, that God knows, that God hears, and God is concerned about it. In fact, God was so concerned about it that he sent his son 2,000 years ago to die on the cross, to take the sting out of death, that one day we might enjoy a world which is free from suffering, free from pain, free from loss and from tragedy. That's how much God is concerned about our suffering. But not only that, but that today, right now at this moment, God is inviting you into his presence through his word, through the Holy Spirit, that you might encounter his peace, that you might encounter his comfort, that you might know his kindness, that you might know his mercy and his comfort through the Holy Spirit this morning. God is inviting you and saying, hey, I know it's hard, but I hear you, I see you, I know you. So come and find relationship with me. Come and find comfort with me. And come and find a sense of freedom amidst the loss, amidst the pain, amidst the hardship. So God is rescuing his people because of his kindness, and also because he wants to display his kindness. Part of salvation is God, revealing his kindness to us through Jesus Christ. Secondly, they are being rescued to serve. They're being rescued for a purpose, to do something. Now note that this promised land, this good and spacious land, this land flowing with milk and honey, by the way, it wasn't literally flowing with milk and honey, just in case you think that, it wasn't like streams of milk and curds flowing through the desert land. It just meant that, milk and honey would be like plentiful supply, but also that milk and honey, they would have everything they need in terms of nourishment and everything they desired in terms of blessing, milk, nourishment, honey, like a nice dessert, a blessing, something sweet. Everything they needed and everything they desired. But this land wasn't empty. God was bringing his people into this land, this amazing land, but somebody already lived there, namely the Canaanites, the Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, collectively known as the Perizzites. I'm joking, they weren't actually known as the parasites. But why was God bringing his people into a land that was already occupied? That seems a little bit odd. Why didn't God, take his people into an empty land, into a land that was readily prepared for them, that was everything set up? When you go to a hotel, when you book into a room, you don't go to your hotel room and find that somebody's already there and they need to be kicked out. You go in and you find it's all laid out, it's all nice and neat, it's there ready and waiting for you. So why was God taking his people into a land that was already the home of other nations? Well, namely because God had already promised this land to Abraham, to his people, and so these nations weren't really meant to be there. They were like squatters, if you like. But secondly, they were really wicked nations. They were idolatrous nations. They were nations who practiced things like child sacrifice. And so part of God taking his people, the Israelites, out of Egypt and taking them into the promised land, one, for their own blessing, but two, to get rid of these people who are committing these kind of like atrocious acts of idolatry and of wickedness, and to remove them from this land. And so part of God kind of bringing the Israelites out of Egypt is to serve a purpose. He wants to use them. He's going to use them to drive out these nations and to cleanse the land from impurity. In Deuteronomy 9 it says, "It is on account of the wickedness of these nations," these parasites, "that the Lord is going to drive them out before you. It is not because of your righteousness or your integrity that you are going to take possession of the land, but on account of the wickedness of these nations, the Lord your God will drive them out before you." So one of the many reasons why God redeemed and rescued his people wasn't because they were a good people, wasn't because they were righteous, wasn't because they were integrous, not because they really loved God, because there were these other people that God wanted to deal with, to drive away and to cleanse his land, ready for his promised people. And that's the same for us as well. So part in that we are redeemed to serve, and that we are redeemed to serve God's will, and redeemed to serve God's purpose. In Ephesians 2 it says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." It's true that in our Christian salvation, that we are both created and redeemed for service. We are both created and redeemed for good works, to do good, that God might express his justice, that God might express his grace, that God might express his love through me and you, through the local church, that he might bring transformation, that he might communicate something of his nature through me and you, through our little lives, and that he might actually do something through us. Since its birth, the church of Jesus Christ has continually been serving. Read in Acts, it says, it shows that they were serving. They provided meals, they provided food to the disenfranchised, to the widows, to the orphans. They cared for people's needs, and since its birth, the church has been serving, and we continue to serve. That's why we have the Adullam program. That's why we have Celebrate Recovery. That's why we have the Olive Branch. That's why we had the support line during COVID, and we still do. Why? Because we're committed to serve. We are committed to serve God's will, to serve God's purpose, to bring transformation, to bring healing, to bring wholeness. And whilst we won't be able to see that in full, we see it in part until the full comes. It includes the random act of kindness that you might do to a stranger tomorrow. It's part of your service. So ask of yourself this morning, how am I serving God's will? How am I communicating his grace? How am I communicating his justice through my life in my world? Thirdly, they are being rescued to worship. God says to Moses, the sign that I'm going to give you is that when this is all complete, you will worship God on this mountain. When you think about it, it's not really a helpful sign, is it? It's like saying, oh, by the way, the sign that you know that this is legit is that when this is all over, you will worship God on this mountain. It's like, well, can I have a sign right now? Like, I'm only going to know once it's all done. Well, I guess Moses had to trust in faith, didn't he? In Exodus 3, it says, if you read it a little bit later on, then you and the elders are to go, in verse 18, then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of Hebrews, has met with us. We've been out for coffee, we've had our meeting. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. So God's message to Pharaoh basically is, let my people go so they can come and worship me. Let my people go so they might come and offer sacrifices, so they might come and worship me, so they might come and be in relationship with me. God is redeeming, God is rescuing his people so they can worship, so they can glorify God, so they can be in relationship with him. That's the same for us. Hebrews 2:10. In our Bible reading plan, we've been reading through Hebrews. It's flipping awesome, and I'd encourage you to start reading it if you're not already. But in Hebrews 2:10, it says, "In bringing many sons and daughters to glory, it was fitting that God, for whom and through whom everything exists, should make the pioneer of their salvation perfect when he suffered." Did you get that? Everything exists through God, but more importantly, for God. We exist for God. We exist for his glory. We exist for his pleasure. We exist to be in relationship with God, to worship him, and to enjoy his loving fellowship. That's why I'm breathing. That's why there's blood pumping in my veins. That's why there's energy in my body. I exist for that very purpose. Man, and when we embrace that simplicity of life, that simplicity of living, that I exist to glorify God, I exist to be in relationship with God, that brings a whole simplicity to life. Suddenly, the questions about future, suddenly the complications about life just seem to fade away, because suddenly I've just found that simple purpose to what life is all about. It's just about being in relationship with God, about glorifying him with my life. I exist to glorify God with my living, and that's it. I exist to know him, to enjoy his grace, to enjoy his love, to be in relationship with him. And yeah, God's got other things we're going to do in the future. God's got plans and purposes that we're going to see rolled out in the future, but I don't need to worry about those things. God will do those in his timing. But if I just stay in close relationship with him, that's it. That's why we're meant to be living. That's why we're meant to be breathing. Doesn't that just bring such a simplicity to life? Let's finish off this passage in verse 13. Moses said to God, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you.' And they ask me, 'What is his name?' Then what shall I tell them?" God said to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. 'I am has sent me to you.'" God also said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, 'The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. Go, assemble the elders of Israel, and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, appeared to me and said, I have watched over you and have seen what has been done to you in Egypt, and I promise to bring you up out of your misery in Egypt into the land, a land flowing with milk and honey." So God reveals himself to Moses as, "I am who I am." And the final point I want to draw out from this passage is that we need to be a people who are defined by God. We need to be a people who are defined by God. So God says, so Moses says, "Okay, God, fine, I'll do your mission, I'll be your man, I'll be the guy who leads your people, but when I go to your people, what am I going to say to them? Am I going to say that I just had this encounter with this strange bush? They're going to think I'm crazy. Who am I going to say that has sent me to you, sent me to them?" And God says, "Okay, well, tell them, I am who I am has sent me." And Moses is like, "That doesn't make sense." Come up with a better name, God, but your name doesn't make sense. I am who I am. What does that even mean? And God says, "No, I am who I am has sent me to you." In describing himself to Moses like this, God is saying that, hey, he is the author of existence. He is the creator of the cosmos. He is the unchanging essence and the source of all things. That he is self-existent, that he is ever-present, that he is all-knowing and infinitely powerful. That's what God is saying when he says, "I am who I am." And it could also be translated that I will be who I will be. As in, like, I will be who I will be, I will do what I will do, and I am who I am, I've been who I've been, I am unchanging, I am unwavering, I am unflexing. I am who I am. I'm the Father of existence, that all things have their definition to me. And so God is kind of revealing his kind of like self-existent nature to his people right at the start of the beginning of their relationship. And note that God is now beginning to have a relationship with a people, not just persons. Before this, God was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and now he's going to become the God of the Israelites, a people. And so right at the start of this relationship, right at the start of this covenant, God is making clear, hey, I am who I am. I'm the Father of existence, that I'm not going to change or adapt to how you want me to be. But I'm going to reveal my unchanging nature to you. What we hear a lot of today is maybe in conversations about God, or people maybe, kind of journeying towards God, what might people say? And you might have said it before, is that I don't want to worship a God like this, or does such and such. I don't want to worship a God who says such and such. And my internal response to that would be like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Who are we to pick and choose who God is like? Who are we to pick and choose the qualities of God? God is not like a pick and mix, or like a designer handbag, or a designer computer where we can craft God to be the God that we like according to our own desires. God is who God is, and God will be who God will be, and God will do what God will do. And it's not our job or our obligation to pick and choose what qualities we like or dislike about God. We are fools to think we can box God up the way we like him to be. Often we feel like we want to box God up and say, well, God doesn't do this, or God, God can't do that. And we box God up by our definition. Well, God is not to be defined by us, but we are to be defined by God. We are fools to try and define God according to our own personal opinion, or according to our own preference. God will be who God will be, and God is who God is. And it's our job, and it's our life's ambition to discover who the true God is, who the living God is, as he's revealed himself. Who are we to say who God should be? Who are we to say what God should do? We are to take God as given, as revealed, but yet we're in luck, because the God as revealed, the living God whom we serve, he is a gracious God. He is a loving God. He is a kind God. He is a just God. That is the God that we serve. That is the God that he has revealed himself to be. And so that is the God that we serve according to his word, according to his revelation, not the God that we want him to be. And I know that often we sometimes have like a simplified relationship with God. We have a simplified idea of who God is, and part of kind of growing as a Christian, or part of growing as a disciple of Christ is growing in our understanding, growing in our experience of who God is. And sometimes that is uncomfortable. Sometimes that is hard, because sometimes you might read something in Scripture, or you might read something that God had declared, something that God had decreed, and sometimes you might feel uncomfortable about it. Sometimes you'll feel, oh, hang on a minute, that doesn't sit right with me. But God is the God who is, and it's our task to mold ourselves and to shape ourselves according to God, that we would be a people defined by God, not that we would define God by our own personal preferences or how society would want him to be. And so as we move forward as a church, I just pray that we would be a people defined by the living God. Not just that God would have some sense of influence on our life, but that God would be defining who we are, that God would be defining who we be, that would be a people who are just constantly pursuing his presence, that would be captivated by his word, that would be captivated by his spirit, and that would be defined by him. I pray that it would be our conviction that we exist for God's glory. We live to know God. We strive to be in relationship with him, and we satisfy our souls in his presence. We are a people defined by God. I'll have the band up on stage. I'm not going to read the rest of the chapter. You can kind of read that in your own time. But essentially, God lays out how he's going to lead the people out. And they're not going to lead in poverty. They're not going to lead cowering or crawling on their knees. They're going to be processing out, and they're going to process out in victory, and they're going to plunder the Egyptians as they go out. They're going to go out in power. They're going to go out in victory. They're going to go out with a bit of bling around their neck as they plunder the Egyptians. We are a people of victory when we follow after Christ. And I just want to finish by looking at Psalm 34, when you're thinking and talking about how our souls and our hearts get moved by God. One psalm or one song that has moved my soul this week. It's been a song by Shane and Shane. Two guys, they're both called Shane, but they're great guys. Terrible band name though. Shane and Shane. Psalm 34, taste and see that the Lord is good. Oh man, I played it like 10 times in a row to the annoyance of my wife Claire, and it was just this amazing song, and it's just basically Psalm 34, and I just want to read it and pray it and respond to it as we finish now. Psalm 34 says this: I will extol the Lord at all times. His praise will always be on my lips. My soul will boast in the Lord. Let the afflicted hear and rejoice. Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. This poor man called, and the Lord heard him. He saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. One of the lines I sing in this song that Shane sing is, "Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Oh, magnify the Lord with me." That we would be a people who are defined by him. That we would be a people who are captivated by his presence. And that our message to the nations, that our message to each other is, come and magnify the Lord with me. Because that is why you exist. That is why you are breathing. That is why you are living. That is why there is blood in your veins. That is why there is energy in your body. You exist to magnify and to glorify the Lord. And so my prayer for us as a church is that we'll just be inviting this world, inviting each other to glorify the Lord with me. We are redeemed to worship. We have been rescued to glorify. Set free to be in relationship with God, to know his presence, to know his love. Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Let's stand. We're going to worship. We're going to pray and respond. Lord, we just know, Lord, that you are good. We know, Lord, that you are faithful. We know, Lord, that your love is enduring, Lord, that your love is steadfast, God. So, God, we just magnify you right now, Lord. God, help us to magnify you, God. Help us to worship you, God. Help us to glorify you, God. God, help our hearts, God, just to beat with joy, Lord, that you have rescued us from the dominion of darkness, God, that you have set us free from the control of sin, Lord, that you have liberated us from our fears, God, as we commit ourselves to your presence. So, God, we just magnify you right now, Lord. We worship you right now. We exalt your name, Lord. Your praise will always be on our lips, God. God, and we exalt your name forevermore. We will extol you at all times. We have tasted and we have seen that you are good. We have tasted and seen, Lord, that you are holy, that you are right, God. And we pray, Lord, that we would be a people who are defined by your nature, God, that we would not try and box you up. We would not try and define you. We would not try and limit you, God, according to our own personal preferences, God, but that we would be a people who are shaped and molded by your presence, God. So I pray, Holy Spirit, God, just stir our hearts towards you right now, Lord. Lord, that you would just set us free from the distractions of our weeks. God, that you would set us free from the sin in our life which so easily entangles our souls, God, that you might set us free to worship you and to be in relationship with you. God, we give you our lives right now, God. We give you our hearts right now, Lord. God, in every room that is watching online, God, in every TV, for every soul that is watching online, for every soul that is here, Lord. God, would your Holy Spirit just rest upon us right now, Lord. Lord, that we might just know your presence, God, that we might know your goodness. Yeah, Jesus.